I was looking at the calendar this morning, and I realized something that I think we really need to acknowledge before we get into anything else today.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
If you are listening to this right now, you are doing something that, statistics say 99% of people want to do, but never actually stick with.
Hmm.
You're showing up. You are putting in the reps on your English practice.
It's the gym membership effect, isn't it?
It totally is.
Everyone buys the membership on January 1st with these, huge ambitions, but by the middle January, the gym is empty.
Yeah, totally empty.
Sticking with language learning is the exact same battle. It's not about intensity. It is all about consistency. It's, doing a little bit every single day.
Exactly. It's that daily grind. And speaking of battles, we are tackling a specific type of battlefield today.
Mm.
It's not a grammar exam, and it's not a job interview, which
Yeah.
are, the things we usually stress about. It's the customer service desk.
The dreaded return counter. The place where confident people suddenly become very, very small.
Right. It's so funny because I think we overlook this. We spend so much time learning how to order food at a restaurant or, talk about our hobbies or introduce ourselves.
Yeah, the fun stuff.
But the moment you buy something online that doesn't fit, or you get a gadget that's broken, suddenly you're thrust into this high-stakes negotiation.
And it does feel like a negotiation, doesn't it? That's what makes it so scary for learners.
For sure.
It's not just social English where the stakes are low. It is transactional English where there's actual money on the line. You have a goal, the store has a policy, and you have to navigate that gap using a language you aren't fully comfortable in yet.
Money and pride. I've heard from so many learners who say they will literally keep a shirt that is 2 sizes too small just to avoid the awkward conversation of returning it.
Oh, I believe it.
They would rather lose the $50 than face the clerk and potentially embarrass themselves.
We call that the freeze response. It is very real psychologically. You're standing there holding the bag. You feel the pressure of the people in line behind you, maybe tapping their feet.
Yeah.
You're worried you won't understand the policy or that they'll ask a question you don't know the answer to and you just shut down. Our goal with this deep dive is to dismantle that fear. We aren't just giving you a list of words, we are giving you a script. So you can walk up to that counter and get your money back without your heart racing.
I love that, turning anxiety into action. So let's get into the sources we have for today. We're looking at a collection of real-world guides on consumer English, some linguistic analysis on politeness strategies, and specifically a strategy that kept popping up. They call it simple is strong.
Simple is strong. It sounds like a marketing slogan, doesn't it?
It really does.
But linguistically, it is the golden rule for this specific context.
But isn't that counterintuitive?
Yeah.
I feel like when I'm nervous or when I'm trying to prove I'm right, my instinct is to talk more.
Oh, 100%.
I want to explain the whole backstory so they believe me. I feel like if I give them more details, I'm justifying my request better.
That is the number one trap, and it is fascinating why we do that. The sources are very clear on this. Over-explaining is actually a signal of insecurity. When a native speaker goes to return something, they are usually incredibly brief. They know they have the right to return it.
Right.
But a learner, they feel this burden of proof. They think, if I don't explain how I bought it and why I opened it and what my cousin thought of it, they won't give me the refund.
So we try to justify our existence instead of just making the transaction. We're trying to prove we're good customers.
Precisely. And the data shows that the more you talk, the more likely you are to make a grammar mistake, and the more likely you are to confuse the clerk.
Right.
The clerk doesn't want a story. They want data. The simple is strong.
Philosophy argues that the person with the most authority in the conversation actually uses the fewest words.
There's a case study in the notes here that illustrates this perfectly, and I think we need to spend a minute on it because it is so relatable. It's the headphones story.
Yes. Walk us through this because I think a lot of people will recognize themselves in this student.
This is a classic example of the over-explaining trap. So a student orders a pair of expensive noise-canceling headphones on Amazon. They arrive, the student is excited, opens the box, puts them on, and nothing.
Oh, no.
Dead silence. They're defective.
Which is annoying enough on its own. You're already frustrated.
Right. But then the anxiety kicks in.
Yeah.
The student needs to contact Amazon support to resolve this. Now, instead of just reporting the issue, the student sits down and writes, well, what is essentially a novel?
I'm looking at the text here. It is. Wow.
Yeah.
Dear Sir or Madam, I am writing to you today with a heavy heart because on Tuesday at 4 p.m. I received the package. It goes on for 3 paragraphs.
It's a lot.
I tried to plug it in. I checked the instructions. I felt very sad because I needed them for my trip.
It's emotional, it's chronological, and it is completely unnecessary.
Right.
The student is trying to build a legal case for why they deserve working headphones. They're treating the customer service rep like a judge in a courtroom.
And what was the response? This is the best part.
This is the punchline. Amazon support replied with one sentence.
Just one.
Just one. Would you like a refund or a replacement?
That is it. Just that one line.
It is it. They didn't care about the Tuesday delivery time. They didn't care about the heavy heart or the upcoming trip. They just needed to know which button to click in their system.
That really highlights the disconnect.
Yeah.
The student was operating on an emotional level. I am disappointed, and I need you to know that. The company is operating on a binary level, money back or new item.
Exactly. And the lesson here is that simple questions require simple answers. If you learn nothing else from this deep dive, learn this. You do not owe the store your biography.
Right.
In fact, giving them your biography makes their job harder because they have to read through all that text just to find out what you actually want.
So let's bring this into the physical world. If we apply this to a brick-and-mortar store, let's say I walk into a clothing shop with that shirt that doesn't fit. I shouldn't walk up and say, "Hi, sorry to bother you. I bought this for my sister, but she actually lost weight recently and she didn't like the color."
No, please don't do that. You walk up, you make eye contact, and you say, "I'd like to return this item."
Full stop.
Full stop. Maybe you add, "It's the wrong size," if they ask for a reason. But that is it. It is direct, it is polite, and it signals that you know exactly how the system works.
It's interesting you say it's polite. I think some cultures might view that directness as rude.
That's a great point.
I know in some places you need to do a little dance of conversation before you get to business.
For sure, and that's a key cultural distinction. In some high-context cultures, brevity can feel abrasive or cold.
Right.
But in English-speaking commerce, especially in the US, the UK, or Australia, respecting someone's time is the highest form of politeness.
Well, okay. That makes sense.
By being brief, you are actually being considerate of the worker who has a line of people waiting. You are making their life easier.
Okay, so we've got the strategy, keep it short, don't be Shakespeare.
Right.
But here's the catch. To be short, you have to be accurate. If you only use one sentence, it better be the right sentence. You can't rely on context clues if you aren't giving any context.
Right. Simple doesn't mean sloppy. Precision is key. If you use the wrong word in that one sentence, you might trigger a process you didn't intend.
So let's pause here and really unpack the core vocabulary. The source material identifies 4 pillars of this topic: return, exchange, replacement, and refund. I feel like people use these interchangeably, but they actually trigger different processes in the computer system, don't they?
They do. They are distinct buttons on the register. Using the wrong one can lead to a very confusing conversation where the clerk is trying to give you cash and you're waiting for a new shirt.
Okay, so let's start at the top.
Let's start with the big umbrella term, return.
Is return just the physical act of going back to the store?
Essentially, yes. To return is the act of giving the item back to the seller. However, we need to be careful with the implication. In the customer's mind, return usually implies, "I want to wash my hands of this transaction." If you say, "I want to return this," the default assumption from the clerk is often that you want your money back and you want to leave.
So return acts as the generic term, but it leans heavily toward take this back and give me my money.
Generally, yes. Now, contrast that with the second term, exchange.
Exchange. How is that different in the system?
Exchange is a swap. You are giving the item back, but you are taking something else of equal value.
Usually because of preference, right? This isn't about the item being broken.
Yes, that is the key context. You use exchange when the product is perfectly fine. It functions. It's not torn, but it's not right for you.
Wrong size, wrong color.
Wrong size, wrong color, or maybe you just realize you hate the style. You are swapping item A for item B.
So return equals money back. Exchange equals different item. Now, here is the tricky one. Replacement. I see learners mix up exchange and replacement all the time. They seem like the same thing. You give one thing, you get another thing.
This is the nuance that separates intermediate speakers from advanced ones. A replacement is specifically for when the item is defective, damaged, or incorrect.
So I wouldn't ask for a replacement if the shirt is just too small?
You could, and they would understand you, but it sounds slightly off. A replacement implies, I want the exact same product, but a version of it that actually works.
Ah, that makes sense. So going back to the headphone story, the student didn't want a different model.
Right.
They didn't want to exchange the Sony headphones for Bose headphones. They wanted the same model just working, so they wanted a replacement.
Exactly. If you tell Amazon I want an exchange, they might send you to a menu to pick a different product.
Got it.
If you say, I want a replacement, the system knows, okay, send a new unit of SKU number 1234 immediately. It's a faster path to what you want.
That is a crucial distinction. And finally, the fourth term, refund. This is purely financial.
Yes. A refund is the reversal of the charge. It is the money going back onto your credit card or into your hand.
Is there a difference between a refund and store credit? I feel like that's a trap people fall into. They ask for a refund and get a gift card.
Huge trap. A refund puts money back in your pocket or bank account. Store credit is when they give you a gift card for the store.
Right.
Sometimes if you don't have a receipt or if you return something too late, they will deny the refund but offer store credit.
That is a good detail to know.
Oh.
So if you specifically want the cash, you need to use the word refund. I'd like a refund to my card, please.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't leave it open to interpretation. If you just say, I want to return this, they might assume store credit is okay. If you say, I'd like a refund, you are drawing a line in the sand.
Okay, so we have the vocabulary locked in. Return is the action. Exchange is swapping for preference. Replacement is swapping for a defect. And refund is getting your money back.
You got it.
Let's look at how this plays out in the wild. The source provides a couple of scenarios, and I want to see how our simple is strong strategy handles them.
Let's do it. These scenarios cover the most common issues shoppers face.
Scenario A, the jacket. You bought a jacket online. It arrives, you put it on, look in the mirror, you look like a potato. It fits badly.
The potato scenario. Very common. So, you analyze the problem first. Is the jacket broken?
No.
Is it the wrong item?
Nope.
No,
No.
it just doesn't fit your body. So the problem here is preference or size.
So what's the script?
You walk in, or you open the chat window, and you say, I'd like to exchange this item for a different size.
I'd like to exchange this item for a different size. Clean.
Mm-hmm.
What if they don't have my size? That happens a lot during sales.
Then you pivot to the return. You say, in that case, I'd like to return it for a refund.
Notice the transitions there. You aren't panicking. You have a plan A, exchange, and a plan B, refund.
And notice what you aren't doing. You aren't apologizing. You don't say, I'm so sorry to be a bother, but it doesn't fit.
Right.
You have the right to a jacket that fits. You purchased a product with the expectation of utility.
That's a confidence shift. Stop apologizing for being a customer. Let's look at scenario B, the coffee maker. This one is higher stakes because appliances are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You buy a coffee maker, you plug it in, and nothing. It's dead.
This triggers that defensive feeling we talked about earlier. You worry they will think you broke it.
Right. Did you drop it?
Yeah.
Did you plug it into the wrong outlet? You start running through the interrogation in your head before you even get to the store?
Yeah, you feel guilty even though you did nothing wrong.
Exactly.
So you have to preempt that with confident phrasing. The source suggests, I'd like to return this item because it stopped working.
Because it stopped working. It's passive regarding the cause. It's not, I broke it. It's, it stopped.
Or, even stronger if it never worked, it was defective out of the box.
Ooh, defective out of the box. That is a power phrase.
It puts 100% of the blame on the manufacturer. It signals that you know the terminology, and the employee's reaction will almost always be, no problem.
Right.
They don't get paid enough to argue with you about a toaster.
That is the reality check, right? The cashier isn't the owner of the company. They aren't losing their own money by giving you a refund.
Not at all.
They just want to clear the line.
Exactly. Help them help you by being clear. If you look guilty and start telling a long story, they might get suspicious. If you are concise and use the word defective, they just process the return.
I want to try something a little interactive here. We've been talking about the dialogue, but let's actually do it.
Okay.
I want our listener to hear the rhythm, the pauses, the tone. I'll be the customer. You be the grumpy but efficient store clerk.
I was born for this role. Let's go.
Okay, I'm walking up to the counter. I have a bag in my hand. Hi, I'd like to return this item.
Sure. Do you have the receipt?
Yes, here it is. It didn't work properly.
Okay. Would you like a refund or an exchange?
I'd like an exchange, please. I
Oh.
just need one that works.
No problem. Go grab a new one from the shelf and bring it here.
Thanks.
Thanks.
That took, what, 10 seconds?
Maybe 15?
Yeah.
And notice you didn't ask, can I return this? You said, I'd like to return this.
That's a subtle power move. Can I? Asks for permission. It gives the option to say no. I'd like to states an intention.
Exactly. In a store policy situation, usually you can return it. Asking "can I" opens the door for a no or a hesitation. "I'd like to" sets the direction of the conversation. It assumes the transaction will happen.
I also noticed you asked for the receipt immediately.
Always have the receipt ready. That is part of what we call nonverbal fluency.
Hmm.
If you're fumbling through your pockets or looking through your emails on your phone while standing at the counter, you look disorganized. If you have the receipt in your hand, you look like a pro.
It builds your credibility before you even speak.
It does. Now, while we are aiming for simplicity, there are still some traps. The source has a section called the correction corner, and it identifies 3 specific traps that learners fall into.
Okay.
These are the things that instantly mark you as a non-native speaker.
And getting these right is an easy win. It's low effort, high reward.
Absolutely. The first one is a grammar trap, specifically regarding verb tense. Why do so many people say, "I buy this yesterday"?
I buy this yesterday.
Yes.
You hear that a lot.
It drives English teachers crazy, but it makes logical sense to the learner. They know the verb buy and they know the word yesterday. They just smash them together.
They think the word yesterday already indicates the past, so why change the verb?
Exactly. But in English, time travel changes the verb. We are strict about that. We are strictly past simple here. The action is finished. It's done. So buy must become bought.
Bought. It's an irregular verb, which is annoying. B-O-U-G-H-T. It looks like it should be pronounced bow-G-H-T, but it rhymes with caught.
Right. I bought this yesterday. If you say, "I buy this yesterday," you sound like you are describing a habit. Like, "I buy this brand every day." It confuses the timeline.
So that's the first fix. Watch your irregular past tense verbs. What's the second trap?
This is the change versus exchange confusion again, but specifically in phrasing. Learners often say, "I want to change this."
I want to change this. I mean, I understand what they mean.
You understand, but it's clumsy. Change is too broad. You change your socks, you change your mind, you change the channel on the TV.
Right.
In commerce, the specific verb is exchange.
It's about sounding professional.
Right.
I want to change this sounds like street slang or just very casual speech. I'd like to exchange this. Sounds like business.
Exactly. It elevates your register. It makes you sound educated and capable. It tells the clerk, "I know the specific term for this transaction."
And that leads perfectly into the third trap, which is the tone trap. We touched on this, but let's drill down. The difference between I want and I'd like.
This is huge.
Yeah.
In many languages, saying "I want" is perfectly neutral. It is just stating a desire. But in English, "I want" can sound like a toddler demanding a cookie. "I want refund." "I want return."
It sounds aggressive. It sounds demanding.
It does. It triggers a defensive reaction in the staff. The magic softener in English is "I would like," or the contraction "I'd like."
I'd like. It's so simple, but it changes the entire vibe.
It frames it as a request rather than a demand, even though the result is the same. "I'd like a refund" gets you the refund faster than "I want a refund," simply because the person wants to help the polite customer.
It's social engineering. You're hacking the interaction with politeness.
100%. Politeness is a tool. Use it.
So we have I bought instead of I buy.
Mhm.
We have exchange instead of change.
Right.
And we have I'd like instead of I want.
If you just fix those 3 things, you're already sounding 90% more fluent in these situations.
Now, speaking of sounding fluent, we have to talk about how to actually say these words. We
Right.
can know the words, we can know the grammar, but if our mouth refuses to cooperate, we're stuck. The source has a pronunciation lab section, and I think this is so important because sometimes we know the word, but we're afraid to say it because it feels clunky in our mouths.
That is very true. And these multi-syllable words like exchange and replacement can be real tongue twisters if you don't know where the stress goes.
Let's break them down. First
Yeah.
up, exchange.
Okay, let's look at it. Exchange. The source highlights that the stress needs to be on the second syllable.
So it's exchange. You have to sort of slide over the X and land hard on the change.
Right, exchange. If you say exchange, it sounds like a noun, like the stock exchange. But as a verb, we usually stress the second part. "I'd like to exchange this."
Exchange. Okay, I can feel that rhythm. What about the next one? Replacement.
This one is longer. The source breaks it down into 3 distinct parts. Replacement.
Replacement. Where's the stress there?
It's right in the middle. Replacement.
Replacement. I feel like the re is very short. It's not replacement.
Correct. It's a schwa sound, almost like replacement.
They need a replacement.
Perfect.
And then refund. Is it refund or refund?
Ah, this is a tricky one. And native speakers sometimes makes this up too, but there is a rule. As a noun, I want a refund. The stress is usually on the first syllable. Our fund.
You mean my U-fund.
Right. But if you use it as a verb, can you refund my card? The stress often shifts to the end. But for our listeners, just focus on the noun. You are asking for a RE fund.
That is a great tip. Nouns often stress the first syllable, verbs the second, like our record versus record, refund versus refund.
English is fun, isn't it?
It's a puzzle, but solving it feels so good. Now, the source mentions shadowing as the best way to practice these specific sounds. Can you explain what that is for anyone who hasn't heard of it?
Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a speaker and repeat exactly what they say almost at the same time. You are like their shadow.
Mm.
So go back to the roleplay section of this deep dive. Listen to us act out the customer and employee. Pause it and repeat our lines. Match our speed. Match our intonation.
It's like acting.
It is exactly like acting.
Oh.
And it bridges the gap between knowing a phrase intellectually and being able to use it physically under pressure.
Melody is a good word for it.
Yeah.
It's not just the sounds, it's the up and down of the voice.
Exactly. When you said, I'd like to return this item, your voice went down at the end. It was a statement.
Right.
If you go up at the end, I'd like to return this item, you sound unsure. You sound like you're asking a question.
So the homework for the listener is to go back to that role play we did, hit pause, and mimic us.
Yeah.
Be the actor.
Yes. Say it loud. Scare your cat. You need to get your mouth muscles used to moving that way so that when you are in the store, it's muscle memory, not mental calculation.
We have covered a ton of ground today. We started with the simplest strong mindset. Don't write a novel, just state your goal. We broke down the specific meanings of return, exchange, replacement, and refund.
We looked at the grammar of I bought versus I buy, and the politeness of I'd like versus I want.
And we practiced the pronunciation. It feels like a complete package. But I want to zoom out for a second before we go. Why does this matter? Is this just about saving 20 bucks on a shirt?
It's about so much more than the money. It's about agency.
Agency, okay.
When you move to a new country or navigate a second language, it is so easy to feel like a child. You feel dependent on others to understand you, to help you.
You feel powerless. You're at the mercy of the listener.
Exactly. But when you successfully negotiate a return, when you walk in, state your case, and walk out with your money, you are reclaiming that power. You are proving to yourself that you are a competent adult in this language, too. You are solving your own problem.
That is a profound shift. It's building evidence that you can handle the world in English.
That is the real victory. The refund is just a bonus. Every time you successfully return an item, you are building a little brick of confidence, and that confidence spills over into other areas of your English learning.
So to recap our journey today, we started with the simple is strong philosophy. Don't write a novel, just state your goal.
We clarified the vocabulary: return, exchange, refund, replacement.
We looked at real-world scenarios, the jacket, the coffee maker, and fixed common grammar mistakes like verb tense and politeness levels.
And we drilled down on pronunciation to make sure you sound natural.
It feels like we have armed our listeners for battle.
We have. But remember, the final encouragement from the source: mistakes are part of learning. Even with all this preparation, you might stumble.
For sure.
You might say buy instead of bought, and that is okay.
Totally okay. The person at the store isn't grading your grammar, they just want to help you.
Yeah.
But the clearer you are, the easier it is for them to help.
That is the core message. Simple English is powerful English. Don't overcomplicate. Don't try to be Shakespeare at the return counter.
Right.
Just be you. Be clear and be polite.
So, here is our challenge to you, the listener. Check your closet. Do you have something with the tag still on it that you bought and didn't like?
Don't let it sit there. Take it back. Use the script. I'd like to return this. Treat it as a field test for your new skills.
And even if you don't have something to return, practice the phrases next time you order a coffee or ask for a receipt. Get comfortable with I'd like.
Small wins build big confidence.
This has been such a practical deep dive. I feel like I'm ready to go return something just for the fun of it.
Please don't harass the retail workers just for practice. But do use it when you need it.
Fair point. Thank you so much for breaking this down with us. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure. Keep it simple, everyone.
And we will catch you in the next deep dive. Take care.